First up, let's talk about the movie Baskin. The more that they inspect this building, the more they realize they're entering the literal mouth of hell. This movie, I'm not gonna lie, did give me nightmares for a few nights after watching it.
Since I'm an avid horror movie watcher, I figured with the description like that, this movie has to be peak horror. After watching this movie and thinking about it for a few days, I want to talk about how this movie was super underwhelming. Right off the bat, I'll give credit where credit is due. For a movie with a budget this small, it has amazing cinematography. Most movies of this caliber would even dare to try to do any camera work like this. Anyways, the movie begins in a cold open, which sorta kinda sets up the plot for the entire movie, but you don't really know it until later on. To keep it brief, the main character Arda had a friend whose father died, and he claimed while on his deathbed he saw his soul leave his body. That may sound like nonsense right now, but I assure you it'll make sense. As the first act begins, we get a massive time skip. Arda's grown up and is a police officer. We get some pretty cool camera work here, but overall it's pretty slow. The movie gives you plenty of time to get to know these characters. Depending on how much you like the characters, that can either be a good thing or a bad thing. Nothing really important happens within the first act, but there's this subplot of this hooded individual bringing in meat. I assume it's intentional, but literally nobody pays mind to it. It kind of just happens and is never mentioned ever again. After some time, they finally decide to call it a night. I also find it funny that they left the entire take of the car driving down the street. This is when the mood went upside down. 30 minutes and we finally get to the plot of the movie. The police get this anonymous call calling for backup. Safety makes it aware that there were stories about this place. Overall, it's a bad area to be, but they have to go anyways.
Ama böyle bir yerin olduğunu hatırlamıyorum da. Siktir!
Things begin to start spiraling out of control. I really like how the director showed that you can go from happy-go-lucky to distraught in seconds. It honestly makes this movie feel more human and natural. Horror movies need moments of innocence to add some humanity to what would otherwise be one-dimensional characters. The movie does a good job snapping you back to reality. As the third act begins, I feel like this is where the movie took a toll in quality. This shot is pretty cool though. Luckily our characters have survived, but everything is different. Suddenly we're randomly introduced to these new sets of characters, who kinda just like camped out at a crash site. Fortunately they made it to where they needed to go, and coincidentally these random strangers know exactly where they need to go. So he gets kidnapped and is forced to direct them.
Eurosolica losipak nach mort.
From this point forward, the movie goes from interesting to mediocre. All of the interesting concepts from this movie were maximized tenfold in this part of the movie. It turned what could have been an interesting movie into a forgettable one.
Zamanında burası karakolmuş. Benim çocukluğumda da ahırdı. Ne gelen olur ne giden. Öyle boş durur.
Efi, buranın varlığından haberin var mı lan senin?
Şefim, işte çocukluğumda duymuşluğum var. Yani Osmanlı'da karakolmuş.
From this point forward, people describe this part of the movie as entering the mouth of hell. Stylistically, it's relatively tame. Overall, it's nothing more than just mindless gore. I'd be lying if I said anything interesting happened beyond this point, but for the sake of graphic content, I'll just skip ahead. An interesting moment, however, is when this seemingly brainwashed person actually tricks the characters into dying. It plays against the rule of wanting to do the right thing, which is sometimes not a good thing. We are then finally introduced to the villain of the movie, which in itself is also pretty underwhelming. This is Baba, but they don't actually say his name in the movie, so we started calling him Gib-Gub. Gib-Gub goes on a brutal rampage, but you finally start to learn the connection between these characters and Gib-Gub. I don't want to tell you every key detail, but I think you should watch the movie and form your own opinion. I think the movie has some high highs and low lows. It drags on for a bit too long, but it gets the job done. Overall, I give it a 5 out of 10.